before we get started. Dude, I can't believe all that happened last night. I want to give two shout outs to two of my brothers, man, that released something that I feel like y'all definitely gotta go see. My boy Jay, obviously, shout out to JD Legend. Man, that reaction was amazing. It was absolutely hilarious. If you haven't seen it yet, you gotta go watch, and you gotta watch the post reaction promo that he cut, man. Great stuff. Shout out to my boy JD Legend, man. That's my brother right there. And then my boy Dustin also released a brand new single while I was gone. Unfortunately, I wasn't here for the release of it because I had completely gotten off social media and stuff in order to lock in, right? And so I wasn't here for the release, but I still wanted to show some love and support to my boy. And so if you want to go listen to Dustin's new single, definitely go check that out. I will leave links to both of those in the description box down below. Now, we got to talk about something today, man. Yo, dude, you know, I woke up this morning and I was like, bro, did I actually read that chapter last night? And I felt that quite a few times this year, but I feel like this one in particular was like, dude, I can't believe we actually read that chapter last night. Like, I genuinely can't believe that last night's chapter was something that existed, because I've been waiting since that chapter, the first initial rocks reveal in chapter 957, the ultimate, you know, with the bounties, the Yonko bounties that was the first time we heard about God Valley, and the fact that Rocks and Garp teamed up to face up against this dude called Rocks, right? And like, we'd heard of Rocks before that, right? Like, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the first time we heard his name was in chapter 906 or 907. I believe it was 907 with the Garp talking about the Rocks pirates and things like that, right? We were like, oh, the flying flavors of the Rocks pirates. And of course we would know, like, Kaido was in the crew, and Big Mom was in the crew, and then we found out Whitebeard was in the crew, and Shiki was in the crew. And so many legendary figures originated from this crew. And, you know, then we found out that he is to Loki what Shanks is to Luffy. And so it was a continuous hype cycle for Rocks, and it got to the point to where we started seeing so many reveals, you know, like the mural, all the stuff that was revealed in Egghead. And it was like, man, I can't believe what we're saving Rocks for. Like, Rocks must be extremely endgame. And now, upon seeing his design, you understand exactly why it is that he had to be saved. That he couldn't be revealed all the way back then, because if not, I mean, it would have been Theory Palooza. Could you imagine if we would have gotten, because when I was reading the chapter last night, upon seeing his face, because outside of seeing his face, I was like, oh man, like, holy sweet mother of Flanders, it is time we're seeing Rocks. When you do the close-up on his face, I thought of three characters, right? I thought of Frankie because of the eye and the three lines underneath the eye. So I immediately thought of Frankie. Obviously thought of Blackbeard because of the nose. And so I was like, man, looks kind of like Frankie, looks kind of like Blackbeard. But he's also striking me a little bit of Buggy as well. So theories would have been going nuts. I could only imagine. Is he Frankie's dad? You know, especially if this same chapter has like the Gale Law, the original Gale Law, giant shipwrights, you know, from back in the day. They were brought up in this chapter. That were also in, shout out to Akash Panda for pointing out the fact that these individuals were first showcased back in Punk Hazard. They're still frozen in Punk Hazard, both above and below, in chapter 660, if you want to go back and see that. A great post-stream discussion that we had last night. But for sure, if that panel would not have followed, if that panel would not have been followed with Roxy Xebec, father of Emperor Blackbeard, the theories would have gone nuts. Because I, for one, probably would have been on team Frankie, you know, because of the eye. The eye, like, when I saw him, I was like, bro, he really does remind me of Frankie. But the nose, I was like, I can't stop thinking about the fact that he potentially very much looks like Blackbeard. So it's like he has like a combination of looking like Frankie, looking like Blackbeard, but at the same time I can also see the Buggy too. So theories would have gone nuts. If he wouldn't have dropped that parentheses, and I could only imagine if he would have dropped the way that he looked, like no silhouette, all the way back during the chapter 957 reveal with the spiky hair and going up against Rox and Roger and Garp and being his greatest rival, I would have been like, man, your theories would have gone nuts. Would have gone nuts. But we got the reveal that he is Blackbeard's dad. And, you know, for so long we've been speculating, is he Buggy's dad? Is he Blackbeard's dad? Is he, what type of relation is he going to have outside of being, of course, the captain of all of these legendary pirates and being a figure that is known as someone that was so legendary that his name was erased from the history books, you know, for being both a legendary pirate and for delving into taboo subjects, and then for everything that happened in God Valley. So obviously an extremely key figure, right? And what better introduction than to come in saying that he single-handedly took out an admiral before even becoming the captain of the Rocks Pirates, because he was just rocking. Somebody pointed out in the stream last night, look, he was rocking with like the East Blue 5, his East Blue 5, right? Starting off his journey. Do you imagine starting off your journey taking out an admiral, man? You know how nuts that is? And shout out to Akash Panda last night for bringing up the great possibility of it being because of a celestial dragon, right? Him going up, potentially being a king who was, and I'm trying to remember who brought up the possibility, the reason why he was brought up into, was it Alejandro Solis? Someone last night brought up the possibility that the reason why he was at the Reverie in the first place was because he's probably the king of Beehive Island, right? Similar to what happens with Blackbeard. And so he made it up there as the king. Something must have happened. He went against this lesser dragon, and he single-handedly killed an admiral. Not defeated, killed, which is nuts. That adds an entirely different layer to Rocks. Because I had been speculating for such a long period of time from chapter 957. Every single character that gets any type of a villainous rep in the One Piece verse, especially from the WG, was more than likely a good dude. Obviously with some faults, right? And not everyone's perfect, but a good dude at heart. And so I was like, man, Rocks was probably a really good dude. But, you know, the way that he was painted, especially for delving into the taboo subjects, he's like a heinous villain to so many, just the same way that Roger, for so many, is like the world's most heinous villain. And then similar with Whitebeard, you know, people were celebrating when he died. It was like, yeah, that villain finally died, right? Like, that's the way that they look at these figures because of the propaganda that's been fed to them by the WG. So I was always like, Rock's probably a good dude. But I was not expecting that, right? Like, first initial introduction, you know, earlier in the chapter, we saw how Harold was talking about, yeah, somebody snuck me in. And then, you know, if that murder wouldn't have happened, I don't know what would have taken place. But the fact that that took place in the Muddy Joa, and it was an admiral that he took out, it's like, man, why do things always happen in the Holy Land? The Muddy Joa, it's like, stuff is always going down. Whether it's the Reverie, now when the thing is on fire, the Emu's talking about, so it's like, man, insanity that normally takes place in the Holy Land, man. They just can't escape. They just cannot escape. So, but it was just so cool to have that be his introduction. Like, do you know how, number one, how rare it is to have confirmed deaths at the hands of individuals in this series, right? Like, the dude is a killer, man. He went out and took out an admiral, which is just insane to me. Number one, in terms of obviously strength, right? A dude who single-handedly took out an admiral is awesome. That is super, super cool. Just in terms of a strength standpoint. But then you look at it from what he's willing to do potentially for either his own gain or for the gains of those whom he deems his friends, and or for those for things that he believes is right? Like, he's willing to actually take individuals out, which is very, very different from maybe what could be seen as like the established quo so far in the series, right? Like, characters don't really die at the hands of others. There obviously have been characters that die at the hands of others, but when you see it in this type of way, especially for somebody at the level of an admiral, it's a different type of taste. It makes him stand out, honestly, for doing that in his introduction immediately upon meeting the dude. You find out, like, yo, my man's is willing to get some blood on his hands, and it's just crazy. And so unbelievable way to introduce the character. And you have a really cool design. What a way to end the chapter, especially with what Loki had just gone through. I can't believe I haven't talked about Loki yet. But with last week's chapter, with 1153, I was so invested in Loki in terms of his backstory. I've been invested in Loki's character from the moment we met him in chapter 1130, right? Like, this is my guy. But it reminded me of the Kuma flashback where I was like, man, I'm really starting to get emotionally connected to his character because of everything that he's gone through, right? And you see how that plays with what he's currently going through right now in the manga, and it's like you can't fault the man for feeling a certain way about things. And I wanted to see how that evolved. And that's what we got in this week's chapter. We saw the evolution of the consequences and the aftermath of what took place in 1153 upon being born. And so when he has that moment where he does the same thing that his mom did, tossing him from the top of the middle of the tree all the way down to the realm of the dead, it's like, man, and he's like, yo, I can't even die. And he's just trying to fill the void in his heart, and it was so incredibly heart-wrenching. And so to follow that up with him meeting the Rocks Pirates, which we know are going to be the individuals that inspire him, is so unbelievably cool to me. Because Rocks to him is what Luffy's been to so many, and what Shanks was to Luffy, and what, I always think back to that episode 10-15 scene with Yamato, a perfect representation of like what One Piece was to so many of us, right? Of like, you open up the book and it's like, mother of Flagnards, right? I think the floodgates open for potential possibilities within the world, and just how beautiful it can be, and Rocks is that for Loki. That very same scene with Yamato in episode 10-15, upon hearing like Luffy and Roger say the I want to be, right? And so I just really can't wait for the establishment in the dynamic between Loki and Rocks, because I really want to see the type of guy that Rocks is, to be the centerpiece, be the captain of a bunch of future emperors that we know are all individuals that were, I don't know if the term would be destined, but from the moment that they came out the womb, that they were going to be leaders of their own crews, that they were going to be kings of their own turf. Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, Shiki, legendary individuals. Rocks was their leader. They chose to follow him. It's like when people look at Zoro, they're like, man, I can't believe he follows someone. Like, who the Flagnards is his captain? Then they look at Luffy like, yo, this guy's nuts. He's insane, no wonder. Right? Like, only someone like that would be capable of leading someone like Zoro. And so, for a bunch of future emperors to follow a dude, he had to have been really special. And someone that special deserves a character introduction of this caliber. And it was just so well done from an emotional standpoint with the Loki stuff, but also from the hype standpoint of like, man, the father of Blackbeard single-handedly taking out an admiral. It couldn't have been done any better. And Oda is the master of character introductions, but just having Rocks being done in this way is so cool, man. Elbaf has been filled with a lot of reveals that make it feel like we're truly heading towards the end of the story after this arc, right? Where we go into Laugh Tale Final War, and it's going to be done after this. And this is another one of those where, I remember when they first talked about the lurking legend possibilities in the Oda note at Jump Festa. I was like, who the Flagnards is that? And obviously in that same year, we got the introduction to Emu, and then we got the introduction to Rocks, and so many different things that like were potential possibilities. And so the fact that we've got so much Emu content since then, and now we even got a Rocks reveal. Matter of fact, Emu popping up on Elbaf and Rocks within like 5 chapters of each other is just crazy to me, man. It's crazy. But it was just really special because I love chapters to recontextualize the entire story, and we've gotten a few of those within this arc. But I think what's beautiful about this one, especially for me, that's gone back throughout all the years that I've been a fan of this series, and rewatched and reread the Marineford stuff. A lot of Whitebeard's lines hit different now. Last night, Suber was talking about how even Ace versus Blackbeard is completely different now. You got the son of Roger versus the son of Rox, you know, and how that led into the most world-shattering event to this day in Ace being about to be executed, and the whole Marineford event taking place, right? That it's like, it's unbelievable how far that pipeline goes now in terms of how different I can look at things with this newly added context of Rox being Blackbeard's dad. We'll bring the Shanks element into this, and the connection to God Valley with Garling, and what potentially could have happened there with Rox, right? Even just the Roger and Rox stuff. But to have a Whitebeard, who we know how much he values family, and the moment that he saw Blackbeard, as shown through the Odin flashback, he invited him aboard. Upon looking at his face, he for sure knew. Whether he knew beforehand, or from the moment that he saw him, he was like, yo, I gotta take him. Like, similar to how we took on Ace. Bro, Whitebeard took Rox's kid and Roger's kid on his ship. And it just so happened that those two stupid sons of his ended up, you know, going in for a clash. It was just inevitable. But Whitebeard, with that context, like, man, he had Roger's kid. He's trying to stop Roger's kid from going after Rox's kid. And knowing all of the history between the original two. It's like, all of that stuff. The line, "You're not the man Roger is waiting for," hits different now. It's always been a really special line. But it's like, man, you're not the man that Roger is waiting for. And he's saying that to Rox's kid. Remember at the end of Stampede, when Roger's talking about, yeah, my son is going to be the one who becomes king of the pirates. Now, I don't know how much Rox cared for Blackbeard. I don't know if that's going to be a whole can of worms we're going to get into, right? With maybe he was a bad father, maybe he was a great father. Who knows? But I don't know how he feels about Blackbeard. But the fact that Whitebeard, like, sitting among him for someone who did not want to be king, he saw the potential in Ace, he saw the potential in Blackbeard, took him all aboard his ship to be a part of his family. But how must he have felt? How conflicted must he have felt when he went to go save Ace, and then Blackbeard does so many despicable deeds in order to do what needs to be done, assuming that Rox potentially must have done a little bit of the same. How much of Rox did he see in Blackbeard? How much did that influence what he did at Marineford? You know, there's so much. The more we know about Rox and about his connection to his crew, the deeper of a wound it's going to be inflicted upon rereading the Marineford stuff with Blackbeard and Whitebeard, because it must have been a really a betrayal that really, really hurt him. And it's like, you understand now why he tried so hard to stop Ace, but at the same time why he understood that this might have just been fate and destiny. But man, everything from his final speech to the way that he acted with Squard, so many things that Whitebeard did in Marineford now have a little bit of an extra more to it. Even Marineford by itself, I mean, Whitebeard, a top 10 character for me, even still to this day. Absolutely love his character. And every time I see him, I'm like, yo, that's my guy, man, that's Fatherbeard. But with this newly added context, you get to see even more of how much was going through his heart, the type of internal conflict that was truly happening inside when all of that was happening. How he just had to accept that this is who Blackbeard is. Did Whitebeard feel like he failed You know, as a captain, as a father, did he feel like maybe this was fated? You know, there must have been a lot going through his mind, man, and especially after Ace died. Once Ace died, he was like, man, I'll gloves are off. I'm gonna go after Akainu myself. And then he decided, you know what? If anyone's gonna fall at the hands of one of my foolish sons and the son of my captain and Rocks, it's gonna be me. So for his final words and everything that he said there to be at the hands of Blackbeard, I wonder how that must have been for him, man. You know. And now there's the potential possibilities we were talking about last night of, you know, how Blackbeard has taken nothing from his father. You know, he doesn't have the Rock's name. The only thing he has is the ship, which is named, you know, the Sword of Xebec, if I'm not mistaken, the Saber of Xebec. For him to not take anything from his pops and just be called Marshal D. Teach, very similar to Ace, who, you know, calls himself Portgas D. Ace from his mother's side. Now I assume that Blackbeard is named after his mother as well, or he named himself after his mother with Marshal D. Teach, probably coming up from the mother's side of things. It just makes you think, man. It just makes you think about all of that stuff. And it makes you think about Blackbeard as well, the type of individual that he is, the little bits and pieces we've gotten to his backstory, the fact that he can't dream, the fact that he can't go to sleep, but he believes that anything's possible. He believed in Skypiea, you know, he believes in his men himself, and that all of this can take place, that he can grab the weapons, that he can grab the fruits, that he can go get the One Piece. Like, all of that is just, it, of course, it's a possibility to him. And it makes me want to find out more about Blackbeard as well, especially with this context and the circumstances around his birth, right? His potential connection to and dynamic with Shanks. How, as a matter of fact, I would love to see some type of interaction between Loki and Blackbeard, because Loki, I'm sure, looked up to Rox as a father-like figure, the same way Luffy looks up to Shanks as a father-like figure. So I wonder how an interaction between Loki and Blackbeard would go, from someone who is his legitimate son versus someone who looked up to him like a father. Like, I wonder how that interaction would probably go. It's definitely one that I would love to see. But it was that type of chapter, man, that just recontextualized a lot of things and was special in so many ways. But just one of those really special, you'll never forget where you were One Piece chapters of, like, man, after all these years, we finally got to see Rocks. And just how cool is that, right? One of the most important and influential figures in the entire story that led to the creation of legends and the God Valley incident and Loki and the Yonkos and, you know, Roger's greatest rival. And it was just so cool to have this be the starter, man, and this be the character introduction, this be the moment that we can look back on and be like, man, you'll never forget where you were when Rox was first introduced officially, right, and first shown off. And especially with the Blackbeard context, the Admiral context, all of the stuff that was in that final spread. It's like, man, I can't wait to find out more about this dude. And I'm so excited for the future of the dynamic between Loki and Rox, because by the time we see the full scope of it, especially with all of the parallels we've gotten between Loki and Luffy so far in this flashback and within the entire arc, it's going to be extremely exciting to see Luffy and Loki's relationship coming off of this flashback, leading us into the end of Elbaf, or I should say the climax of Elbaf, and how their dynamic continues to grow, especially considering how similar the two of them are, and knowing that the two of them also may have something with Blackbeard. Luffy for sure has something with Blackbeard in the future, but Loki as well. And there's just so many great possibilities for future interactions that this opened the floodgates for. But before we end the video, I do want to talk about and speculate on Blackbeard maybe not being the only son, right? Like, Rox potentially having multiple children on the seas, because the Frankie thing is spooky, man. I mean, he really does remind me of Frankie, especially with the eye. So I would not be surprised if he is someone like Frankie's pops, or if he is someone like Buggy's pops, or anyone else in the series as well. Even outside, but if it's just Blackbeard, that elevates so much that if it ends up being just a Blackbeard father thing, completely fine with that. That surpasses everything that, you know, we were initially thinking about, speculating about. But if he does have more than one kid, it would make so much sense to me, especially with how similar they look. But it might just be a style thing, you know. They just stylistically look very different, very very similar. But yeah, man, just one of those chapters to recontextualize so much of what we've already experienced. It's going to elevate the material that is already special to begin with and stuff like Marineford, right? And the Ace versus Blackbeard, and a lot of Blackbeard's interactions. I can't wait to see more from Rox now, because the more we see from Rox, the more it elevates potential things with Blackbeard, potential things with Whitebeard, and so many things that have already happened in the series, and it's going to cause even more excitement for future interactions as well. So it definitely was one of those chapters that allow us to look back on things differently. We're also getting extremely excited for what's to come, even though it is within a flashback, and that's just beautiful to see. So this Loki flashback has been extremely special so far, very emotional. But just like with the Kuma flashback, where it started off extremely emotional, then we got the hype God Valley chapter, and now in this one we got, you know, start off extremely emotional, and then we got the super hype Rock stuff with his crew, man. It was just great to see Rox and Stussy and Shiki and Whitebeard, and what an amazing final spread that was, man. He's just such a cool design. But it's a special one. Just a really, really special one. I will see y'all next time. Let me know what y'all thought about this week's chapter in the comment section down below. If you want to see the reaction to this week's chapter, that of course was done live last night. You can see it on the live tab, or I can leave a link to it in the description box as well, if you would like to see the 3-hour video we had yesterday, or the live that we had last night. But if you just want to know my thoughts on the chapter, brilliant chapter, man. Definitely right there with some of the other chapters that have come out this year as definitely favorites. It's going to be a tough discussion at the end of the year for favorite chapter, especially since it looks like the grade is just going to continue. And next week is the 28th anniversary chapter. So you know Oda's going to have cooking something for that, man. At chapter 1155, bro. You know, I was talking about this on stream last night, but it's been 100 chapters since Oda announced the beginning of the final saga. And you know what better 100 chapter anniversary for that than the Rox reveal. So I will see y'all next time. Thank you so much for watching this series, man. The gift that keeps on giving, bro. Rox, dude.